So not so long ago, I was building the Canvas application and I came across one of the limitations. Now this limitation that I'm talking about is the absence of key input listeners in our Canvas applications. And it got me frustrated quite a bit because I was absolutely sure that I will have this functionality when I was planning to build my application. So to overcome this little problem, I decided to create my own PCF control that would listen for my keyboard inputs. And once I was finished, I thought it would be really nice to share it with everyone. That said, in this video, I would explain how such PCF control would operate. Then I will show you a demo in Canvas application, how it actually works. And then, if you're interested, you can stay with the video and we will go a little bit into the code and see how it looks under the hood. So it all starts with the Canvas application in which we will deploy our PCF control. Now, whenever application loads, our PCF control will start listening for keyboard inputs. And whenever a user hits certain keys, our PCF control will trigger a certain method. Now, in this method, our logic will check what kind of key combination was hit and whether our PCF control should return the outputs or not. In case our key combination was within input parameters array, the PCF control will return the updated output parameter. Finally, in our Canvas application, we can listen for these output parameter changes, and based on them, we can then launch certain PowerFX functions or logic. So in essence, it's a very simple PCF control that only listens for our keyboard inputs, and on certain occasions, it will inform our Canvas application if something needs to be done. And now, since we have our process explanation out of the way, we can jump into Canvas application and see how it actually works. So you can see already that I opened my very simple Canvas application in which I have a couple of fields and a couple of buttons. The main logic of application is that whenever I click submit button, I will move data from my upper field to my bottom field. Simple as that. Now, to give you a demonstration, I could put test1 string in my upper field and press submit button, and you can see that the value is being passed from top to bottom, and this is completely simple PowerFX function. But what can I also now do with this PCF control is that I can put another string, for example, test2, and hit enter, and you will see that the value after my keyboard input was also moved to the bottom field. And the beauty of it is that it's not hard-coded into PCF control itself. It can be then configured from our Canvas application layer. And now, since we're finished with our demonstration, let's see how we can configure this functionality in our Canvas app. So here I am in the edit mode of my Canvas application, and I will start with the key down listener PCF control that you can see already that I included into my application. Now, I placed it in the top of my app, and to be honest, it doesn't matter where are you going to place it because it's transparent and it will work either way. More important factor is actually the input parameters for this PCF control. Now, in here, you can see that for my keyboard shortcuts, I defined the strings separated by semicolon, combined from Enter and Ctrl plus B. So it means that our PCF control now will be listening for these two inputs. Another important value is our ignore input. So if I would select my ignore, you will see that I assigned a dynamic value, which is called ignore keyboard override. And I need this value because it's not always that I want to trigger my logic upon my key down inputs. For instance, you could have a situation where you would want to use Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V in some different place of your application, but in certain field, you would want to override these values with your custom logic. Therefore, we have this ignore value that we can pass as true, and then the PCF control will just not work. Lastly, there is our onChange event, and this one will be triggered whenever our output values are being changed. So if our PCF control sees that we hit enter, for instance, it will then return our output values. And in this particular case, it's not very logical, but I have two different outputs attached to the same logic basically. So whenever we have enter or Ctrl+B selected, what we are then doing is we are selecting submit button, meaning that then we will trigger certain PowerFX function that is assigned to our button. And then we are setting ignore keyboard override to true, meaning that we will be losing focus from our field. Hence, we want to then ignore our PCF control in other uses of application. And that basically concludes how we can set up our PCF control logic. But there's one more additional thing that I would like to show you, just not to leave any gaping holes within the logic of my implementation. And if I would select my input value field, we will see that on select event, I'm setting my ignore keyboard override to false, meaning that whenever I put my cursor on that input field, I already want to follow along with our PCF control logic, meaning that if I will press enter, then we will want to return certain outputs and then trigger certain power effects logic. So this is how it works. And if you're satisfied with it, feel free to download the GitHub repository, and there is already a solution file included in it, and you can play around with it. But now I will jump into Visual Studio Code and show you just a little bit more about this whole PCF control and how you can extend it for your own personal needs. So here I am in my Visual Studio Code, and you can already see that I opened my manifest file. And in here, you can see three properties that we have already saw in Canvas application. So if you would want to have a bit more maybe sophisticated ignoring logic or some additional logic in a sense, you could add additional input or output properties in this file. So if you then want to include some additional logic, for example, some computation, or if your application is running in model-driven apps, maybe you want to include some navigation for your user to reach different form, you can do that in keydown div tsx file. In essence, here we have just a handle keydown method, which checks what kind of keyboard input we got, what kind of keyboard combination we've got in comparison to what kind of events we are listening to. And if there are matches, we will then just prevent default behavior from the browser. And in here, you would want to extend it with your custom logic. So custom code goes here basically, so you can include any method you want. This is basically all about the code part of this PCF control. I don't really want to dig deeper. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And that basically wraps up our video. So as I already mentioned, feel free to leave any questions about this whole functionality in comment section of YouTube video. You will find all the links necessary to run this control in description section. And as always, I really appreciate you staying tuned with these videos and for all of the support. So thank you once more, and I hope to see you next time.